Duan, for the invitation and kind introduction. Hello, everyone. My name is Tuo. I'm a researcher at Princeton University. So I'm also looking at, interested in architected assembly, structure, and metamaterials. The way we are looking at it, we want to create a way to deform those structures in large deformation, okay? So we got a lot of inspiration from different concepts, for example, chirality, differential geometry. Specifically, we like origami. So folding origami can be it's an art, okay? The process can be very complex, but the result is beautiful. So this is one of my favorite art piece origami folded by Eric. So you are looking at 11 musicians and 11 instruments, and total number of paper that he was using was 11 plus 11, 22, okay? And then, so I just showed you one of the most complex origami folding, but there is another way to fold it. Some pattern can be very, very simple. For example, Miss Kreslin, who is a French artist, she was folding this so-called Kreslin origami. So just using two tubes and one piece of paper in the middle. And then she utilized this twist to generate this spontaneous folding. And then you can see you have a folding. Because of buckling, you have this crisp pattern in the middle, okay? So this pattern is essentially the main motivation for our research. And then the way we are looking at this Kreslin origami, essentially a shell-based model, but we are looking at a different way. We consider them as trusses. So then you are looking at the trusses, we can get the key geometric information of the truss, and then we can build up a simplified analytical model. Then if you look at the screen, this quadratic form, essentially we consider all the bars as spring. And then, although this analytical solution is very simple, we can get some insights from it. The insight we get is the geometry, this truss is bistable. So it means that it has two configurations. These two configurations, you don't need to apply any load. It just stand there and stable, okay? And then from the equation, we can draw the twisting angle and also the elastic energy envelope showing on the bottom left. Then you see that this two local minimum indicates this has two stable states, okay? And then also from this simplified analytical solution, we can know that how to play with the energy barrier between these two stable states. Energy barriers means like you need to put a certain energy to break so that you can transit between these two stable states. One way is to utilize the geometry. For example, we can utilize 4-gon, 6-gon, 8-gon, and then assuming we build up this geometry with same material, but you can see the energy envelope, the amount of energy you input this structure to deform it is very different, okay? And then another way, more straightforward, we just changing the material, we build up this geometry, then we can get tunable mechanical property in this case. So now let's look at some experiment, okay? So in this array, I'm using the building up all the cells with same material but different geometry. And then you can see that when I load it, the two cells with the 8-gon geometry deform first. Why? Because among all the geometry, 8-gon has the lowest energy barrier. And then as we keep loading it, the 6-gon geometry start to deform, okay? Because the 6-gon has a little bit higher energy barrier than the 8-gon. And then as we keep loading it, in the end, the 4-gon geometry will deform as it has highest energy barrier among all the three designs. And then you will see some interesting snapping behavior happens here, okay? And then this, we are looking at the geometry, in fact, to control the folding sequence. We can also explore how the material property can change the folding capability. For example, assuming that we have a total amount of unit cells, essentially we have 7 red, 7 white, and 7 yellow. The different color means they have the material you build them is a little bit different, okay? Although they have different geometries, but because the material is different, and then the mechanical property of each unit cell is different. And then now we are looking at how do we distribute those 21 unit cells in a certain design domain to get different type of assembly with different mechanical property, okay? So here are 4 represented cases. I'm still looking at 2 of them. If you see, if your top row and bottom row, there are two assemblies. They are made of same amount of material, but the way we assign the unit cell is different. And you can see the mechanical property can be quite different. In the first row, if you look at the displacement load curve, we will see that the peak forces, they are gradually increasing, okay? But then you can, the second row, the peak forces are almost the same. Then if you compare the stored energy with these two assemblies, they are almost the same, which is making sense because they are essentially built up the same material. And then let me show you a video how this experiment has been conducted. Then you get a more intuitive idea how this works. For example, same idea, same amount of material, we just change the way we assemble them. This is the first case. As you can see, at this loading, you will see this snapping behavior indicating this assembly has multiple stable states. And then you will see that in this case, the peak force of this assembly as deforms is gradually increasing, okay? And then in the second scenario, I just show you, as we load this structure, the peak force will be almost the same, okay? So it depends on different type of application. Maybe this case from an energy dissipation perspective, when you have a peak, constant peak load, that may be ideal, okay? And then I'm showing just to play with different, like the kids playing Legos. We can play different ways to assemble them. And then in this case, I control that such that the second, the third peak force, they are almost the same. And the first one be lower. And then in the last example, I'm going to show you we can play with the design to get different different mechanical property. As you can show here, I want to have the first and second peak load almost the same, and the third one will be higher than them. And again, I want to emphasize that because I build up those material with the same amount of material, the total stored energy, they're almost identical. Okay. So now you can see that from the assembly, the system is highly modular. We also utilizing this modularity concept to create some structure that can deform in a very interesting way. And the specific mechanism we are looking at is coupled twist with axial deformation. Okay? In the literature, especially a paper published in 2017, they are looking at this concept. So when you compress the structure, you actually twist. Okay? But the literature has a limitation, means that this type of deformation is very small. For the original paper, the twisting angle is smaller than 3 degrees. So our interest is to expand this concept in large deformation. Okay? So then we achieve a 3D design from left to right. It will twist up to 90 degrees, and then implant it can contract or expand up to 25%, and then vertically, the height change will be more than 50%. This highlights the large deformation idea we are looking at. Okay? We are also creating this two type of actuation scheme. One involving compress with free rotation. The other one with we are twist assembly but allow free translation. Okay? Let me show you some experimental result to highlight this concept. This is the first boundary condition. We are going to apply a twist, but allow free translation in the vertical direction. Then you see the experimental result. As you can see that now we are twisting this geometry, and then in the counterclockwise direction, up to 83 degrees. Then you can see implant, the assembly is contracting, okay? But vertically, it's keep shrinking. And then we reverse the twisting direction to clockwise, and then keep twisted until it reaches the least volume configuration. And this is demonstrated that for the first boundary condition, twist with free translation, we can achieve this type of deformation. And then if you look at some data from the experiment, we compare these kinematic parameters, for example, height change, edge length change, and twisting angle, and then compare those experimental results with our analytical solution. You see the result match quite well. Okay? And then this comes to the second boundary condition. We start exactly the same geometry, but now we are applying a vertical displacement allow free rotation. As you can see that as we compress this geometry, at the very beginning, there's almost no twist, only vertical deformation. That is because a dipole contains two different chirality. They are deforming only vertically, okay? And then as only one layer, then you start to twist, okay? Again, with this boundary condition, we can also reach this lowest volume configuration. So we also compare, look at some key geometric parameters, and also we plot some representative configurations. I want to highlight that with these two types of boundary condition, although in the end configurations are the same, but during the transition configuration, they are different because the boundary condition is different, okay? And then we also created a surrogate simulation model to understand the behavior of the assembly. We love this reduced order modeling because comparing to the standard shell elements in finite element, in general, just building up the mesh, it takes hours, and render simulation sometimes takes days. But with this reduced order modeling, we can get the behavior very fast. The reduced order modeling is essentially based on bar and hinge. Essentially, we are getting the key geometry parameters and then simulate them as springs, okay? And then if you're looking at, for example, the figure in the central bottom, we compare the experimental result with the simulation from this reduced order modeling. You see that overall we can predict the trend of the curve, but we admit that this reduced order modeling is not perfect because we cannot get fully information comparing, for example, standard FEM. But from a global kinematics perspective, we love it because we can get insight from this simulation. And then I'm showing you some simulation result. In the simulation, we also implement these two types of boundary conditions, right? One is compression with free rotation. In this case, the chirality of the unit cell doesn't matter because we only compress it and then free rotate. And the chirality in general dedicates to the twisting direction. So this is the simulation result. We can also get this bistable, multi-stable behavior with different type of peak force. And in the second boundary condition, we apply twist, but with free translation. But you see here, because of twist, chirality plays a big role. Then you can see that we have two arrays, different chirality, then the mechanical property can be very different. Okay? So this is simulation at the unit cell level. We can also simulate at the 3D. You see, this is the first type of boundary condition that's very similar. Boundary condition exactly same as we apply experiment. That simulation can help us to verify our experimental result and to get insight from it. And then this is the twist boundary condition, as you can see. And then you can see that we can, with the simulation, we can play with the shifted twisting direction. We can get this quite unusual type of torque envelope. Okay. Then what we can do out of this assembly, the first concept we're looking at, so is so-called non-commutative state transition. In the physics textbook, we learn about, for example, if you have rubber, you apply left twist, right twist, and then if you reverse the twisting direction to right and left, essentially you get the same result. But here is different. Here, our assembly, the deformation depends on a sequence of loading. Let me give you an example, okay? Let's start with this fully deployed configuration. And then the first loading sequence we have here is, sorry, okay. Now, the first loading scenario is we want to apply a counterclock twist and then clockwise twist, okay? This is scenario number one. And then you can see that after we apply these two types of twists, the assembly goes back to the original configuration, okay, which is fully deployed. But then in the second scenario, I'm going to reverse this twisting direction. Then what we're going to do is we apply the clockwise twist first, then counterclockwise twist. Let's see what will happen, okay? So we are applying a clockwise twist. The assembly is twisting, contracting, and shrinking in height. And then now we reverse the twisting direction to counterclockwise. As you can see, the assembly jumped to different configuration, which is shorter. Okay? This highlights that our assembly depends on locking. The deformation of assembly is highly dependent on locking sequence. Okay? This is one application. The other application is like we want to create some robot outfit. The way we are doing it is a proof concept. We are integrating some magnetic response material on top of assembly. And then by control the magnetic field direction, we can control the folding sequence or enable locomotion of assembly. First of all, I'm going to using magnetic field to control the folding sequence. Now you can see that we want to fold the red layer first. As you can see, this is the demo of the experiment. Now if we reversed the magnetic direction, then we can fold the white layer. Okay. Just to confirm our actuation scheme robust, I want to fold it twice. And then if we keep changing magnetic direction, we can make it move. For example, we can showcase some very preliminary locomotion. For example, forward, backward, steer, left and right, and then come back. Okay. So the last application I'm going to show you regarding the thermal regulation. If we incorporate some optical material on this assembly, and then we can fully utilizing the different configuration to achieve the so-called passive cooling or heating. Essentially, as a proof concept, we're just utilizing the black and white paper to build up the unit cells. And then we expose this assembly under the sun, okay? And then depends on the configuration, you can see the heat map can be very different. Advantage of this scheme is that because the fabrication is so straightforward, material is so cheap, we can actually scale up. For example, we can be a facade or roof on a building to save energy for thermal regulation. Okay? So with this, I would like to thank my wonderful collaborators, Xiangxin, Continuous, Xixi, Chirality, Mingjie, and my supervisor, Princeton, Glaucio Paulino. Okay? And then hopefully enjoy the talk. If you have any questions, here my contact. I'd like to connect. Thank you so much.
To see the full recording of this and previous presentations, as well as information about future CDFAM events, visit cdfam.com.